Right, let's get ready for the next talk. I have Cheryl Biswas right beside me. She's a strategic threat intel specialist with a major bank in Canada. She has experience with security audits and assessments, privacy, DRP, project management, vendor management, and change management. Cheryl engages in the security community as a conference speaker and volunteers, mentors, and champions women in diversity in cybersecurity as a founding member of the Diana Initiative. Please give a warm welcome for Cheryl Biswas.
Good morning. Can everybody hear me okay? Oh my gosh, thank you so much for being here at 10 o'clock after the night before. And if you are doing CTF, hope it's going well. Hope you are having a fabulous Hackfest. My French is rusty, so I will just stick to English. Okay, so I wanted to give this talk, and I wanted to do it with some fun because as I was going through the events, it struck me that it had some really good parallels with Lord of the Rings. So here we go. I'll first of all do the obligatory disclaimer because I'm here on my time, on my dime. So those views and opinions are mine, not those of any of my employers, past, present, possibly future. And yes, I do strategic threat intelligence. That is my jam. I do other work that is really necessary but not nearly as fun. And I find things. And when I find things and connect the dots, I get very excited by that. And then they lead to talks that I get to share with you guys, which is the best. I'm engaged in this community. I'm passionate about this community. I love when we can get together. I've missed being here, and I'm so happy that I can be back at Hackfest again. I am a cat mom, not a mother of dragons, and one of my very favorite things to do is say, what if? Because it always leads down great rabbit holes. All right. Like I said, I wanted to give this talk because it's personal. And based on what we know so far, we're going to walk through the details of these attacks. There were 2 attacks, and examine a timeline of events and disclosures. And it's important to note that what came to light, how that was disclosed, and when that was shared, because timing is crucial, and that changed the narrative. We're also going to examine the role that's played by BYOD and why we need to change with the times so that we can detect behavioral anomalies. Okay, so we hear it all the time, right? Secure your passwords. It's a best practice. And it's true. You need to have something that will help you do it better than we are currently doing it even. And I'm not talking about password 123. An application that helps us generate big, strong passwords, things we won't remember, things that are locked away securely. So password managers, that's what they're designed to do. And LastPass is and was a very popular password manager because we want things that make it easy for us to do the hard stuff, right? How many here have a password manager? How many here use LastPass? How many here are still using LastPass? We'll talk later, it's okay. Not judging, not judging. It's used by consumers like ourselves all the way up through corporate ranks. So it has business clients, and we all know that that business data can lead to breaches, which can lead to painful regulation and fines. Nobody wants that. And in 2022, you probably heard about them. They suffered 2 breaches, apparently. We'll talk about those. But it took until March of this year for the dirty details to be fully disclosed. And we still don't know everything. Essentially, an unknown attacker was able to literally take the keys to that kingdom, and they compromised everything stored in the LastPass vaults. This is essentially how it works. One master password, One word to rule them all. Now, over 45 million people use LastPass. That encrypted digital vault is a great idea. And when it works, it is excellent security. These are the things that go in that vault. These are what you want to be protecting. Identity. We've heard about identity theft. Identity is the attack vector. Convenience. Face it, we are creatures of habit. Convenience is key. It is also the root of all evil. And we put this stuff in there as well. And that's what we think we're supposed to do. Who hasn't gone through this? But my friends, yes, it leads us down a slippery slope. And we try to craft ones that we can remember, but that unfortunately makes them more vulnerable. We are predictable, and the bad guys know this. So what could go wrong? Well, I'm not saying that we have to put our faith in the experts here, but we cut corners, so we need something to help us do better with our passwords. And because technology is about speed and convenience and efficiency, it's great until it isn't. And things do go wrong. We can't. Nothing is perfect. We can't expect them to 100% go right. So my first takeaway here is do your due diligence on things. Evaluate them, because there's pros and cons with everything. But find what you're going to use reliably and consistently. And the other truth here is trust, but verify. That's going to come up later too. Are we prepared for the unexpected? So I made this timeline of various password managers, and there's a lot of them out there. It's a great selection of things. And then, on the advice of a good friend, thank you, Patrick, he suggested color coding them to really call out. And I think you can see here what we're talking about. Software it's just simply code that we write. Who are software developers here? It's not a perfect science. There will always be mistakes in the code, and you do the best you can to catch them. However, those flaws become vulnerabilities which can become exploited. And in this case, some of these were reported as actual vulnerabilities, and some were discovered by security researchers who were knocking on that door to see what they could find that was wrong. And if you don't find it, you can't fix it. So thank you to the pen testers, and thank you for responsible disclosure. So some of these leaked unencrypted passwords, unencrypted credentials, because they couldn't always encrypt and clear the passwords from memory after the users logged out. Let me share with you some of the things that came to light. They weren't clearing out the passwords after the user logged off, so that was still in memory. Passwords were visible in plain text, or just plain exposed. This isn't what we're banking on when we're investing in a password manager. Would you have expected to find these flaws in any of these products? No, because we put our trust in something. Maybe we verified, but not enough. What we expect from anybody we're doing business with, especially something that we trust, is transparency, accountability, responsibility. So the takeaway from this was, how do these organizations handle problems when they come up? Do they tell us what we need to know when we need to know it? Timing. And yes, I was one of those LastPass users. So I did some research, and the name Bitwarden came up regularly. People were happy with it. It was trustworthy. It was doing its thing. It had a good reputation. Low cost? Yeah. Easy to use. Okay. Well, the saga continues. Why? Because there was a known problem for 5 years in that browser extension. E. Interestingly enough, and this was a good learning point to share, it's a common flaw with all password managers. Does anyone here have a specialty with password managers or a lot of familiarity with them? Because this is a good thing to take away. It has to do with this autofill vulnerability. And that is so that an attacker could effectively steal any credentials as they got entered in an untrusted domain or an embedded iframe. Just for everybody's sake, I'll do a quick explanation of what an iframe is because not everybody's technical, myself included. And that is when part of one web page gets embedded into another web page. It's common practice. It makes good sense. It really can work well. However, that's great for videos, but risky if you're filling in forms, especially forms that are going to contain sensitive or financial information. And you've got to be sure that that embedded code has not been previously compromised. Anybody here familiar with the group MageCart? They did some nasty stuff with embedding and hiding things in and iframes to steal all that lovely financial data. Okay. Well, password managers trust, but they don't effectively verify that that iframe is legitimate. If you have clicked on it, to the password manager, all of them apparently, that's okay, let's go for it. That's all it needed. And in some cases, it will automatically, this is a default setting, autofill when the web page loads. So you don't even get the chance to say no. And that means really understanding the configurations of your password manager before you actually start running it. Bitwarden came clean, and they told people, turn that off, which is good advice, and probably good advice for anything that you are running. Because otherwise. So let's move into the tale of 2 attacks and how, at LastPass, they didn't connect all the dots at first. So like I said, there's a lot of users, 30 million, 100,000 corporate. That could be one of your businesses. Owned by a parent company known as GoTo. Anybody here familiar with GoTo? Because they're a player in this as well. Guess what? GoTo was also breached in August last year. It was a great month. So, what do we know? Here's the kickers. Data stolen from attack number 1 was used to facilitate attack number 2. And there were valid credentials. Whoa, that makes it easy, right? They're legit. That attacker can go right through. We know how this works. It's painful. Okay, so let me walk you through the steps of that initial breach. I'm sorry, is it readable at all? We'll try. First one, reconnaissance. Do your homework. Yes, this pays off in a big way. They knew who to target. Initial access. Then they get in, they've got their foothold, they've got persistence, and then they take what they find to elevate their privilege levels. Well, once you're in, you go hunting. You go find the good stuff. And they did. They do enumeration, and then lateral movement. At Threat Intelligence, we use that a lot. Not in a good way. They stole that data and, yes, they exfiltrated it. And then they get to work on attack number 2. Now, unfortunately, we do not know still who was behind this and what their motivations were. So I don't think this story is over yet. Who did they compromise? They targeted a software engineer and their corporate laptop. They gained access to the cloud-based dev environment. Now, LastPass insisted that there was no customer data or vault data in there, and nothing of that sort was taken at the time. However, what was in there? Juicy things. Internal system secrets and certificates. Oh my God, you can go to town with certificates. Source code. Anybody remember last year a group of kind of cocky script kiddies known as LastPass? They helped themselves to a trainload of source code in their attacks from some pretty big names. They got storage access keys. So, in addition to all of that, they got the information about technical details on how LastPass operated, how things worked there. So that just made it easy to work within the system and put stuff together even more effectively to enable that second attack to happen. And now I bring you to attack number 2. This is somewhere between that first attack in August and November. Haven't pinpointed it exactly. The details haven't been made that public. So it's the follow-on attack. We've got the reconnaissance from that first attack and then being able to enumerate things. Definitely have access. This is where it got interesting. They bypassed MFA. That's one of our worst security nightmares because we really rely on that second factor security level. And essentially in MFA, we trust, just not so much anymore. And with that, they got privilege escalation. So, just a little takeaway here. If you've got identity, and you've got access, and you've got privilege, we've essentially got a trifecta for takeover. Well, they got in there, they had lateral movement, did more reconnaissance for all the stuff that they were looking for. They found everything they could have wished for, and more. They stole that. They exfiltrated that, and then they just did a nice GTFO. And they did try to go one rung higher, but they sounded an alert. And this was when they tried to use a cloud identity and access management role. But the alert was actually effective on this one, and it alerted the company, and that's when everything stopped. So these are things that we should have enabled within our organization to be tracking for anomalies, unusual behavioral patterns, because that's what today's kind of attacks are really demonstrating to us. All right, like I said, they did their homework. In this second attack, they picked one of 4. There were 4 senior DevOps engineers. These guys had all the access and all the privilege. That's who you want to go after. And with that, somewhere between August the 12th and October the 26th are the dates that we know, they got the ability to exploit a vulnerable home device. What was that device? LastPass isn't going to tell you officially, but it's something that I know a lot of us use. A Plex media server connected to, their home network and their personal laptop, which they were using as BYOD. Unfortunately, that Plex server had a 3-year-old vulnerability attached to it. So they exploited that because it hadn't been fixed. And with that, the adversaries were able to install a keylogger, and they could copy the entrance, the login of this particular individual as they got in. So let me call out that perceived gap between BYOD and corporate network. And this was how you bridge that gap. It's not such a gap anymore. They tailgated effectively right across and in here. Once you ride a session cookie in there or an access point, you're in over here. You can stay in here as long as that person is signed in until they're signed out effectively. Sometimes you can even extend the persistence, but as far as I know, you're in there and you can do what you want till you're signed out. Well, they They found a lot of really good stuff. I'm just going to circle back to Plex, and I can give you that CVE number if you're interested, because you may want to check if you are using Plex. It was, oh, I don't have it, sorry. It's on a later slide, I think. But interestingly enough, remember I said August was a banner month last year? Plex also announced that it was breached. Same time. Coincidence? And it has been actively targeted since. CISA actually added that vulnerability to their known exploited vulnerabilities catalog, if you're familiar with that. CVE 2020-5741, that's it. Okay. So what kind of things did they take? Secrets and encryption keys. This is the stuff you don't want anybody near. This is why that gap was supposed to be effective. Cloud-based backup storage. Essentially, that's our stuff in the cloud. And this is even worse. This is their backup of the MFA, but also a federation database. And apparently the federation database is the corporate secrets and information. So this is all those system configurations and API secrets, third-party integration secrets, encrypted and unencrypted LastPass customer data. Ouch, ouch, ouch. Okay, let's run through those takeaways. In these attacks, they're going to take that first batch to use to leverage a second batch. That's going to be it's not going to be a single attack. They're staging attacks, and they've done their homework. Even though that database was encrypted, that decryption key had been stored separately. And that was good until that data also got stolen. And then they could moosh it all together. Sorry, that's a very technical term. So these tactics that they used evaded detection because they're totally legit. They've got the identity, they've got the privilege, they've got all the access. And a big reminder to go back and revisit how you're utilizing BYOD in your environments. What are you watching for? Where might you be exposed? Where's that gulf you think is secure between personal and corporate? Well, let's talk about what went wrong. I'm going to walk through a series of messages from Karim Touba, who is the CEO of LastPass, that tells the story. This was their initial announcement back in August. They say that, yes, the attacker did take some source code and some proprietary LastPass information, but it's okay. We know better. And then they worked to tell us, right, what we want to hear. We want to know, was the master password compromised? Was the data in the vault compromised? Was any personal information compromised? What about my stuff? Do I need to take any action now to protect my data? That was met with a resounding, nope. We're all good here. We will continue to update our customers. Thank you. I feel so much better. But then there was another update on September the 15th. Now, they discovered that the attacker had been limited to only a 4-day period. Who here understands the concept of dwell time? How much freaking damage do you think you could do within 4 days? Thank you. But it's okay, because they did not find any evidence. There was no evidence that they had accessed customer data or encrypted password vaults. I'm thinking, see no evil, hear no evil? Okay, all right. That was a pretty confident statement. And everything is riding on this assurance, that physical separation between development and production. There's no customer data or encrypted vaults on that side. Okay. And yeah, their zero knowledge is working for us. Okay, Well, there's a little bit more to this, because we know that the attacker gained access to the developer's endpoint, and they had persistent access so that they could impersonate them. And that access, even though it was limited to a 4-day period, gave them time enough to comb through all kinds of things. And we know that even though they say there was no evidence of access to the most precious things, that shoe hasn't dropped yet. And so the saga continues. We're getting things shared to us over a period of time. And that's what I want to circle back to at the beginning, where I said timeliness. What we need to know when something happens, when we place our trust in a third party. Will you be forthcoming? Will you let us know right away so that we can also take action to prevent something worse from happening? One of the things I heard was that LastPass had insufficient logging. They didn't have immediately at their, like we have logs, right? We use these. These tell us what's going on. He didn't have access to those logs. They really didn't know that this shit had gone down. And they had to get their information from another third party. I believe AWS was involved in that. This delayed a lot. And LastPass really didn't realize how bad things were. And that is not an excuse. So this update came out at the end of November. What a surprise! They've detected unusual activity by a third party in the cloud storage service, an unauthorized party. And with the information taken from attack 1, they've created attack 2. This is November. Stuff went down in August. And this is where, of course, the narrative really starts to change, because now we know. Now they're saying that they know that that data from August has been used in this attack. They've connected the dots. And this is the first time they mention the relationship and impact to go to the parent company. But he's really convinced that that zero knowledge will save us all. So I will share with you their presentation of what zero knowledge means. And LastPass says it operates on-prem data centers and uses cloud-based storage for the backups or for regional data residency purposes. It sounds good enough. And they stress they keep that cloud storage service separate from production, unless and until it's not, right? So I'm going to just say, I'll take zero trust over zero knowledge any day. And this came in time for the holidays on December 22nd. Ho, ho, ho. The narrative took a turn for the worse, because now we learn that that source code and the technical information, which was not a big deal in August and not a big deal in September, that was used to target another employee. And that's how the attacker got the credentials and the keys. And that's what they used to access and decrypt the storage vaults. Those storage vaults, which were supposed to have been safe this whole time. This is months later. And once in to that cloud storage, they copied that information, taken it down, those backups that had our customer data. So now we know what they were referring to when they mentioned certain elements of customer data back in November. They weren't quite ready to drop the bad news. So let's end with this. Yes, they took both encrypted and unencrypted data. That gave them a complete picture of what customers, us, what we were accessing online. I don't feel very good about that. And at this time, they actually warned customers. They issued 2 warnings. It took them this long to come out and say, oh, hey, that threat actor, they might try to use brute force in order to guess your master password and to decrypt the copies of vault data. That would have been really good to know before this. And then the threat actor could could possibly target you with phishing attacks. How many months? Like, wouldn't you have liked to have known that then so you could have your awareness in place? Taken some evasive action from potential attackers? Yeah, phishing attacks, credential stuffing, brute force attacks against your online accounts associated with LastPass Vault. One of the cool features with LastPass, convenience, right, is that it would automatically launch sites for you if you enabled it to. That was really cool and convenient. Convenient for us, super convenient for an attacker. I feel you, Samwise. I do. Which brings us to March of this year. And this was a huge announcement. Apologies were made for the frustration caused by, the less than stellar initial communications and the failure to effectively communicate more frequently, comprehensively, to which I say, you think? Yeah. There were several pages to this memo, and it detailed all the things that LastPass was doing, all the things they were doing to make themselves better, and things they had learned. This was a lot of words in damage control. Do I sound a little sarcastic? Yes, I am. Salty. But it comes down to this statement here by them, where LastPass is effectively absolving itself. Because it's laying this on a threat actor who exploited the vulnerability. It's his fault. And third-party software, that's the problem, not us. It wasn't our stuff. It was that over there. I have nothing else for that. So what I will say is this. If you have got BYOD enabled and it has access into the corporate network, be aware that there is third-party software associated with those BYOD products, and you have no way to effectively monitor or maintain that. Not that I'm aware of. And even though LastPass wants to say that alerting and logging was enabled during these events, it wasn't effective in this case. So go back, this is a great opportunity, and review what your alerting, monitoring, and logging could tell you about how BYOD devices that are enabled within your group may have access to your corporate network. It's an opportunity for improvement on your end. Don't be Kareem. Okay, so a roundup of what was taken. Woo, API tokens. You can do a lot of damage. Yeah, secrets, third-party integration, that customer database, and vault items with a lot of really good stuff in them. So I'd say severe damage. Yeah. Like I said earlier, this is far from over. And I want to think about ripple effects over time, because we see this. When you're sitting in traffic and something happened way up the highway about 2 hours ago. That's how it is with major breaches, major attacks. It's circles over time of impact. So security blogger Brian Krebs had 2 postings this past September about a series of attacks against cryptocurrency people who had, there were six-figure attacks against them. And Krebs points out that these were not your run-of-the-mill consumers. They took security very seriously. They actually had safeguards in place. What was the one commonality they had? They were using LastPass, and they were using LastPass to store the seed phrase. I'm not into cryptocurrency, but I will explain quickly. That seed phrase is a private key, and it safeguards access to those cryptocurrency investments. So since last December, 35 million at least stolen from over 150 victims. But don't worry. LastPass is on this, and they have implemented a new program for stronger master passwords, a minimum of 12 characters, and you might even get prompted to change yours. All right, so quick run through. Your takeaways, dwell time. How are you managing your BYOD? Leveraging your logins, logging and alerts. What are you watching for? We've talked about that important juncture between BYOD, corporate network, and the expansive attack surface that it presents. Remember, that's something over which we really don't have effective visibility, monitoring, or safeguards. Because these attacks are developing, and they are not what we're really tracking with what we've got in place. And remember, identity and access and privilege is that trifecta for takeover. Trust, but verify. And I leave it at that. Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions? Yes.